Today on the Matt Walsh Show, a lot has been said about the Democrat victory on Tuesday, and much of the analysis, as usual, misses the point. So today we'll look at the one key factor that decided the election, and it's not the economy. Also, a black comedian admits that he is stalking a random white family whose ancestors allegedly owned his ancestors as slaves 200 years ago. Nothing strange about that. The trans male who harassed that woman at Gold's Gym speaks out, and he's about as creepy as you'd expect. Plus, we'll explore the different levels of fatness that fat acceptance activists have come up with as part of their never-ending Oppression Olympics contest. Talk about all that and more today on the Matt Walsh Show. The holidays are here, which means your calendar is probably packed with hosting duties, shopping lists, and endless to-dos. When life gets this hectic, sleep often takes a backseat, but that's exactly when you need it the most. Quality rest is what keeps you energized for holiday prep, helps you stay patient with the in-laws, and lets you actually enjoy the season instead of just surviving it. And here's the truth. If your mattress isn't giving you the deep, comfortable sleep that your body craves, you're starting every day at a disadvantage, and that's where Helix Sleep comes in. Finding the right mattress doesn't have to be guesswork. Helix makes it simple with their sleep quiz. It asks about your preferences and sleep style, that matches you with the mattress that's actually right for you. And they're not just making promises. Helix is the most awarded mattress brand out there with glowing reviews from Forbes, Wired, and other trusted experts. Best part, they deliver straight to your door with free shipping, so no hauling anything yourself. Plus, with their Happy with Helix guarantee, you get 120 nights to try it out and a limited lifetime warranty. So if it's not working for you, returns and exchanges are totally seamless. It's basically risk-free, and it's a way to finally get the sleep you deserve, especially when you need it most. My family has completely switched to Helix mattresses now. My wife and I have had a mattress for a long time now, and we love it. It is the most comfortable mattress I've ever slept on, hands down. And we've also updated all of our kids' mattresses to Helix. So go to helixsleep.com/Walsh for 27% off site-wide. That's helixsleep.com/Walsh for 27% off site-wide. Make sure you enter our show name into the post-purchase survey so they know that we sent you. helixsleep.com/Walsh. 1776 was not the beginning. It was the breaking point. The American Revolution was born from 150 years of colonial experience, tensions, and transformation. Want to understand what really led to independence? Hillsdale College offers a free miniseries on colonial America that tells the full story. Hillsdale College has created a fascinating 6-part documentary series where their professors explore their religious, political, cultural, and economic ideas that shaped America's unique character during the colonial period. You'll discover why the idea of liberty, especially religious liberty, drove settlers to risk everything crossing the Atlantic, how early Americans built local governments to rule and protect themselves, and why America became a place where virtue could lead to peace and prosperity. While most of us know the Declaration of Independence as the birth of our nation, this course digs deeper into something even more fundamental, the forging of the American character that made the revolution possible in the first place, and why reclaiming that character matters more than ever today. Best of all, this miniseries is completely free and easy to access. And if you're interested in learning more, Hillsdale offers over 40 other free online courses on everything from C.S. Lewis and the Book of Genesis to the rise and fall of the Roman Republic, plus in-depth courses on the American founding and Constitution, all at no cost. Right now, go to hillsdale.edu/Walsh to enroll. That's no cost, and it's easy to get started. There's hillsdale.edu/Walsh to enroll for free. hillsdale.edu/Walsh. Now that we have a more complete picture of what happened on Election Day, it's tempting to come to the conclusion that the America First movement is in a lot of trouble. Certainly, a lot of commentators are attempting to make that point from both the left and the right. And for the most part, they're off the mark. Now, for example, I saw some posts talking about how in the Atlanta metro area on Tuesday, Democrats managed to flip counties that went for Donald Trump last year by 25 points, 26 points, and 28 points. And those figures sound really striking. After all, how could any county go from overwhelmingly supporting Donald Trump to voting Democrat in just 1 year? How could these numbers possibly be accurate unless MAGA is on its last legs? Well, the problem with this analysis is that on Tuesday, turnout in Georgia was only about 20%. Hardly anyone voted because it's an off-year election, and the race didn't have any national implications at all. So the people who did vote weren't saying anything about the Trump administration or the state of the country or anything like that. The election in Georgia determined the makeup of Georgia's Public Service Commission, which regulates utility prices. And people living in Georgia don't like the size of their electricity bills at the moment, which have increased by about $50 a month since 2022. Electricity has gotten more expensive because more corporate data centers have moved into town, and it's been unusually warm, requiring more power for air conditioning. And people are frustrated by the cost. And I mean, that's really all there is to it. Along the same lines, you'll hear people panicking about the fact that Democrats flipped 2 seats in Mississippi's state Senate, ending the Republican supermajority in that chamber, which the GOP has maintained for more than a decade. Supposedly, this is a major rejection of the Republican Party in a deep red stronghold. But again, the context is important. Democrats only won the elections because of court-ordered redistricting pursuant to the Voting Rights Act, a flagrantly unconstitutional and anti-white piece of civil rights-era legislation that, as we've discussed, is about to be struck down by the Supreme Court. So they redrew the maps in Mississippi on the basis of race in order to steal more votes. And what do you know? Well, they stole a lot of votes. That's the story. And once the Supreme Court gets rid of the Voting Rights Act, which it looks like they will, this particular kind of story won't happen again. Similarly, it's true that Republicans lost several races in the state of Pennsylvania. Bucks County, the site of Trump's infamous McDonald's campaign stop, elected a Democrat district attorney for the first time since the 1800s. Bucks County also elected a Democrat sheriff, replacing a Republican. And additionally, the Democrats flipped a number of other highly prestigious positions, including the mayor of Beaver Borough and Erie County executive. But again, you need to look at the context. Trump carried Bucks County by 0.1% in the 2024 election. He carried Erie County by just 1%. So these were always extremely tight, competitive counties for Republicans. And without Trump at the top of the ticket, it makes sense that some of them would slip away. And frankly, if we're being honest, some of these races probably involve some degree of fraud, or at least the number of voters was so small that the result, it's hard to glean anything from the result. Consider the fact that a Democrat won the race for Clearfield County Court of Common Pleas in Pennsylvania by 178 votes, or 0.8%, beating a Republican who serves as incumbent DA. In the 2024 election, the same county went for Trump by 52 points. This is a result that really doesn't even make any sense, even accounting for the fact that turnout was cut in half. I mean, does anyone really think that voters have swung against Trump by a margin of 51%? The change is so large and the voting pool is so small that can't really learn much from it, except for the fact that, someone should probably audit the ballots. So what's needed at the moment is not the usual meltdown about how Republicans are doomed to lose everything in the midterms next year and how we're destined for total Democrat Party control of government in 2028. That kind of thinking is never helpful. And in this case, it doesn't really reflect what happened on Tuesday. Even though what happened was bad. It's like a bad situation for Republicans, as we talked about yesterday. There's no doubt about that either. So we can't cope in the other direction by pretending that all of this is perfectly fine. What we need to focus at some length instead on the handful of elections from earlier this week that actually do have implications for the party and national politics, the things that we can learn from. And by far the most consequential result, of course, was Zohran Mamdani's election as mayor of New York. And the more you look into exactly how Zohran Mamdani won this race, the more you realize exactly what Republicans need to start doing if we want to prevent socialists from replicating their success in every other major city in this country. So we'll put probably the single most important statistics on the screen right now. And this is kind of all you need to know. It's an exit poll asking voters how long they've lived in New York City, along with who they voted for. So as you can see there, Mamdani won 83% of voters who have lived in New York City for less than 5 years. So I'll say that again. Mamdani won 83% of voters who have lived in the city for less than 5 years. Cuomo received just 15% of those voters. And as you can see from the rest of the numbers in this poll, the longer that people have lived in this city, the less likely they were to vote for Mamdani. It's a sliding scale. Among New Yorkers who were actually born in the city, Cuomo was ahead of Mamdani by double digits. Okay, that's this. All of the analysis that people are doing and looking at all the numbers and this and that and looking at the economy, it's really got nothing to do with it. This is everything. Okay? In other words, the people who have invested the least into New York City, the people who don't really own any property, don't have family connections, don't have any ancestral ties to the city at all, haven't paid taxes for social services or city infrastructure, who just arrived on a direct flight from the third world, they are the ones dictating the future of New York to actual New Yorkers. Again, 40% of New Yorkers weren't even born in the United States. The word for this situation is not migration or mass migration. The word is invasion. It is a hostile takeover by people who have absolutely nothing to lose because they're not gambling with their families or their futures. And they're deciding the direction of a country that they don't care about. They can pick up and leave once they ransack New York. And that's exactly what they intend to do. They'll move to another city in another state, and they will repeat the process. Now, in response to Mamdani's victory, I've seen some on the right make the argument that in reality, the primary reason Mamdani is so popular in New York is that millions of people, particularly young people, can't afford to live in the city. Young adults are getting college degrees that cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars and train them to be communists. And then when they realize they can't get a good job with their useless degrees, they decide that capitalism is the problem. And therefore, we're told we need to meet these socialists in the middle. We should feel their pain and hold them blameless for their frustration. That's the path that a lot of commentators are charting for the future of the Republican Party. This is totally wrong. One of the problems with this line of reasoning is that these disaffected young adults in New York are voting for the exact problems that they're complaining about. The people who have lived in New York for their whole lives understand very well that rent has doubled in the past few years precisely because New York has imported so many foreigners, so many third worlders, people who think and talk just like Zohran Mamdani. As a result of open borders, millions of newcomers, as Democrats call them, are now competing with New Yorkers for jobs and housing and emergency services and everything else. And instead of deporting these foreigners, New York's government has simply expanded its welfare state to include every single one of them. They all get free pre-K now and free buses and free health care and free housing and free bail when they commit felonies, which a lot of them do. Now, over in the third world, that sounds like a pretty good deal. But actual New Yorkers, actual Americans know through experience, if nothing else, what happens next. Prices go up for everyone. The affordability crisis gets even worse. And you can't solve the problem with higher taxes because none of the invaders are paying taxes. And all the wealthy, the tax-paying New Yorkers are leaving. But the other problem with believing that the socialists are onto something and that we should blame capitalism and the financial institutions is that voters in New York, they don't actually care about the economy. Okay? These voters, the less time they've spent in New York, so we're supposed to believe that this is all about the economy, even though it's the people who've been here for 5 seconds. The people that have been in this economy for 5 seconds are the people who put Mamdani over the top. And so it's about the economy, really? He won 83% of the vote for people who just got here. And we're supposed to believe that what tipped it was the economic situation? Are you insane? No, Lee Kuan Yew, the first prime minister of Singapore and one of the country's modern founding fathers, put it this way. In multiracial societies, you don't vote in accordance with your economic interests and social interests. You vote in accordance with race and religion. Well, that's it. That was obviously the case on Tuesday in New York. Take a look at these exit polls. Every single demographic group that's preferred by the Democrat Party, which is to say every demographic group other than white men, went for Zohran Mamdani. Black men, black women, Latino men, Latino women, white women, every other minority group. They all supported Mamdani over Cuomo. But the one demographic group that Democrats demonize at every available opportunity, white men, they went for Cuomo. So it's almost as if, as Singapore's founding father put it, everyone in this particular multiracial society, is voting exactly as he said. They know that they aren't going to vote based on policies or debates or campaign advertisements. Now, there's no time for that. Instead, they recognize that their racial and religious interests matter more than anything else. So that's how they make their decision. Like that, they're coming from places where that's how it works. That's how it works in much of Africa and the Middle East. They're coming from these heavily tribalistic places. And where you're not like the economies, they don't even have economies in most of Africa. What they have, though, are tribal factions. And you side with your tribal faction no matter what. And so that's how it works in New York, which has now imported much of Africa and the Middle East. Race and tribal factionalism trumps everything else. And to be clear, when I say that voters choose candidates based on racial factors, I'm also talking about voters who will pick candidates based on pure racial resentment, meaning that their votes are best understood as a vote against a particular racial group. That's the best way to understand these figures from Tuesday. As you can see, 84% of women aged 18 to 29, yes, 84% of women aged 18 to 29 voted for Zohran Mamdani. No other demographic group on the chart has anything close to that margin. So if you meet a young woman in New York, then regardless of her national origin, her race, or her income, she almost certainly voted for the foreign communist who despises white people. And also, when she gets harassed or assaulted on the train or mugged on the street, it will be, in a very real sense, exactly what she voted for. Now, how could that be? How could a white woman vote for that? How could she vote for someone who hates white people? She is white. Well, it doesn't seem to make sense, but then you see videos like this one from Mamdani's victory party featuring a former Bravo actress named Jennifer Welsh, who unfortunately we've talked about a little bit on the show recently. This is a woman who has done so much work to her face that now she resembles something like a transgender Willem Dafoe. And in this clip, Welsh solved the riddle that we're discussing. Not the riddle about why she has injected botulism into her face and made herself look so deformed, but rather the riddle about why she would vote for someone who despises her. Well, she makes it crystal clear how it's possible for that to happen, how it's possible for a white woman to vote for a foreign communist whose entire platform is premised on disenfranchising and punishing whites. Watch.
It was all white people in here right now. It would be boring. I've grown up in those circles. Everybody needs some spice and some color in their lives. Life's a lot better. That's the coolest thing about America. Americans have no culture except for multiculturalism.
Well said.
And we need to teach people how to embrace that. These crusty white people need to learn how to embrace it.
Americans have, it's hard to understand what you're saying because of all the background noise and also because of all the Botox. She can't even move her lips. But so what you said, just to make it clear, Americans have no culture except for multiculturalism. Crusty white people need to learn how to embrace it. So those are the words of the rich, white, probably wine-drunk actress talking to Mehdi Hasan, who also, of course, despises white people as well as Christianity and the West. This is the unholy alliance we talked about yesterday between foreigners and liberal women, and it's very clear that both of these groups are motivated by intense resentment and hatred towards the very group of people who built this country and have called it home since before it was founded. That's all this is. Okay, there's no logic here. These are not people who have the economy. It's got nothing to do with it. Okay, they hate white men. They couldn't be any more clear about it. They hate America. They hate American culture. They want to destroy it. They hate white men in particular. And that's what's motivating them. That is what is motivating them. Okay, if the price of gas went down and rent was cheaper, they would not hate white men or hate American culture any less. Just to be clear. These are, if I could put this as gently and nicely as I can, these are wretched, evil parasites who are openly plotting to erase our culture and identity and replace it with a dystopian communist hodgepodge of third world dysfunction. And in the case of Jennifer Welsh and millions of other women like her, they're not voting to advance their own racial interests, unlike the other people who are visible in that clip, who are, so much as to express their deep-seated resentment of white men. That's all this is. It's emotional incontinence. It's envy. It's resentment. And you could tell that. You could tell it's emotional incontinence because the idea that Jennifer Welsh presented in this clip, which is also promoted by the left more generally, doesn't make any sense. I mean, it does not withstand any scrutiny whatsoever. The problem with saying, that America has no culture except multiculturalism is that multiculturalism is not culture. It's anti-culture. It's the eradication of our identity as a nation. Multiculturalism is a kind of culture in the way that a black hole is a kind of star, which is to say, it's an inversion of the thing. It is the opposite. It is what happens when the thing is destroyed. And that is why in every single case, every single one, multiculturalism has proven synonymous with disaster and ruin. We have seen this everywhere across the West. In Germany, Angela Merkel famously admitted more than a decade ago that attempts to build a multicultural society in her country have, quote, utterly failed. But she kept the floodgates open to foreigners anyway, who have proceeded to turn Germany into the worst performing economy in the entire world. As Germany's chancellor recently put it, the welfare state as we know it today can no longer be financed by our economy. Well, turns out, none of these migrants are getting jobs. This is what happens when you bring in a bunch of migrants who are not interested in working, but they want you, they want you to take care of them. Turns out it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. You can wish that it works. You can hope that it works. You can tell yourself that it will work, but it just doesn't. It can't. And, a lot of these migrants are also committing crimes, lots of crimes. In the past decade, according to Germany's government, a total of 136,000 known crimes were committed by Syrian suspects alone. That's one crime every 39 minutes by a Syrian migrant in just that country. Overall, the crime rate for foreigners is roughly 3 times the rate of Germans. And that's based on official statistics, which are obviously unreliable. They usually don't record crimes committed by foreigners at all. So even though they're trying to stack the deck in favor of foreigners, still they have to admit that the numbers are staggering. Now, it's the same story in Sweden, where 3 out of 4 murders, attempted murders, and manslaughter offenses are now committed by so-called migrants or the children of migrants. According to Sweden's government, quote, foreign-born individuals are 2.5 times more likely to be registered as suspected of a crime compared to those born in Sweden with both parents also born in Sweden. For people born in Sweden with 2 foreign-born parents, the likelihood is over 3 times higher than for those with Swedish-born parents. And again, those are the most conservative numbers available. Now, we could go on and on and on. We could list many more examples of the failure of multiculturalism. The more multicultural your country becomes, the poorer and more dangerous it becomes. This is the case everywhere, all the time. It never works any other way but that. And that's the case from England to France, whose president also declared at one point that multiculturalism was a failure. Quote, it's a failure, Sarkozy said of multiculturalism more than a decade ago. The truth is that in all our democracies, we've been too concerned about the identity of the new arrivals and not enough about the identity of the country receiving them. And then, like Germany, France kept importing more and more foreigners anyway. They noticed that it was a failure, that it's not working, that it's destroying their country. And they said, well, what are you going to do? I guess we're just going to give up on our country. But no country proves my point better or with more comic effect than Canada, which has now been taken over by Indians and Sikhs. Something like 1 in 5 residents of Toronto is from South Asia, according to official estimates. The actual numbers, again, probably double that. But that's why Justin Trudeau would dress up like a Bollywood star and bow his head and clasp his hands for the cameras. The pandering was not exactly subtle, nor was its purpose. But somehow, once again, Canada has managed to outdo itself on this front. So meet Graham McGregor, who's a member of Canada's provincial parliament, which is basically a state government, in Brampton, Ontario. He's also Canada's Minister of Citizenship and Multiculturalism. So we're going right to the source here. And Graham just posted this hostage video celebrating the birth of somebody named Guru Nanak Devi Ji. And then he wished everybody a happy Gurpurab. But you got to watch the whole thing because it gets better as it goes. So enjoy.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Sat Sri Akal, Mera Naam Graham McGregor hai, Ontario's Minister of Citizenship and Multiculturalism, and your MPP for Brampton North. Today we celebrate the birth of Guru Nanak Dev Ji, whose message of equality, compassion, and service continues to inspire millions around the world. His teachings remind us to live life with humility, to uplift others, and to see the divine in all. On this special day, may we carry forward his legacy by spreading kindness and standing up for justice. Wishing you and your family a very happy Gurpurab. Mere valo, tono or tode pavarnu, Gurpurab dia, lak lak videnya.
So imagine being 50 years old, living in Canada your whole life, and then for the first time, seemingly out of nowhere, you start hearing your politicians talking like this. You half expect the guy to hold up a copy of today's newspaper to prove that his captors haven't already killed him. I mean, it's painful to watch in every way. But at the same time, I have to admit, I think I could do a better job. So I'm going to subject you to my own rendition of whatever he just said. Let's see how we do. He said, quote, wishing you and your family a happy Gurpurab di lak lak vadhayan. Close enough anyway. The point is, in Canada, the politicians have to read lines like this with a completely straight face. I mean, you can see their souls like leaving their bodies as they do it. It's an admission of defeat, of conquest. They're desperately buying time until they're replaced for good, and they know it. And meanwhile, Canada's economy, like the economies of virtually every nation in Europe, has stagnated. It's been overwhelmed by a glut of foreigners who immediately gain access to every social service that Canadians have to pay for. And instead of leadership, instead of somebody admitting that multiculturalism has destroyed Canada, we're left with pathetic videos like this one. It couldn't be any more clear that identity and culture are prerequisites for having a functional country or a country at all. Your nation has to have a national identity and a culture, or it cannot exist. Multiculturalism is the antithesis of identity and culture. It's the absence of a common purpose. It's the absence of stability. And it inevitably leads to a drastic increase in racial resentment and crime and poverty and tribalism and factionalism and every other marker of social decay. Now, Democrats know all this. They're not making a mistake or a miscalculation. Just like Europe's leaders, they recognize that multiculturalism destroys nations. And just like Europe's leaders, they're going to continue to push for it. Precisely for that reason. Multiculturalism is an expression of hatred and resentment, and it always has been. If you're a conservative and you're blaming Tuesday's losses on tariffs or, the economy or anything like that, then you're missing the most important factor of all. You're missing the point. And the point is the quote I said earlier: in multiracial societies, you don't vote in accordance with your economic interests and social interests. You vote in accordance with race and religion. And that's what we saw on Tuesday. And sometime between now and the midterms, conservatives can either learn this lesson and start voting themselves as a unified front in accordance with our own common interests to protect our national identity, or we could continue sniping at one another, blaming one another, and ultimately losing what is left of our nation. Now let's get to our 5 headlines. Owning a home is amazing until it's not. One minute you're living your best HGTV fantasy. The next, you're wading through a flooded kitchen at 2 a.m. because a pipe decided today was the day to give up on life. Spoiler alert, home repairs have zero respect for your schedule, your wallet, or your sanity. Look, regular homeowners insurance usually doesn't cover the everyday stuff that actually goes wrong. Plumbing failures, HVAC breakdowns, electrical issues. Most of the time, you're on your own for those repairs, and that's where HomeServe comes in. Think of it like a subscription for your home. For as little as $4.99 a month, you get a backup when things break, and repairs always hit at the worst time, right? We all know that, especially as we get into holidays. Instead of frantically searching for a contractor in a panic, you could already be on the phone with HomeServe's 24/7 hotline, getting someone scheduled. It's simple. Pick a plan that fits your budget. If something goes wrong, just call and they handle it. They've been doing this for over 20 years with a network of 2,600 local contractors with 4.5 million customers, a 4.8 out of 5 rating, and an A+ from the Better Business Bureau. They're clearly the real deal. Help protect your home systems and your wallet with HomeServe against covered repairs. Plans start at just $4.99 a month. Go to homeserve.com to find the plan that's right for you. That's homeserve.com. Not available everywhere. Most plans range between $4.99 to $11.99 a month your first year. Terms apply on covered repairs. You guys ever read protein bar labels and feel like you're reading off a candy bar? Most protein bars are loaded with sugar and processed junk that leave you bloated and unsatisfied. My team was hunting for something better, a clean protein bar that actually keeps us energized. Now enter Equip Foods Prime Bar, the first grass-fed beef protein bar made with only real food ingredients and absolutely nothing to hide. Starting today, my listeners will receive an exclusive discount on Prime Bar, which has become our team's favorite protein bar on the market, with 20 grams of protein in every bar. I've tried a lot of protein bars on the market, and none of them taste like real food. They taste artificial. They taste just kind of weird. But Prime Bar actually tastes like real food and good food. With just 11 clean ingredients, including collagen, beef tallow, and colostrum, naturally sweetened with dates and honey, you get 20 grams of clean protein without the bloat. No whey, no seed oils, no gluten, no artificial junk. They're third-party tested for heavy metals, microplastics, and pesticides, so they can actually back up their cleanest bar on the market claim. If you want to try the cleanest protein bar on the market that already sold out once, go to equipfoods.com/Matt Walsh. Use code Matt Walsh at checkout to get 25% off one-time purchases or 40% off your first subscription order for a limited time. That's equipfoods.com/Matt Walsh and use code Matt Walsh at checkout. Well, the comedian Roy Wood Jr. appeared on the Shannon Sharp podcast, I guess a couple of days ago, and he confessed to something quite bizarre. This is one of the weirder things that we've heard someone say on a podcast, and that is saying quite a lot. Listen to this.
Found the white family that purchased the first black wood of my bloodline off the slave ships in Charleston.
Yep. That's what we came off of.
If I wanted to today, I could find the white wood descendants in southern Georgia and pull up on their house. One day I will.
Yeah.
They ain't got no money though. I Zillowed they crib. They broke. Like, yeah. That's the thing we'll talk about with slavery, man, is that there was a lot of white people fumbled. Like, y'all.
They fumbled the bag.
Yeah, you had working for you, you still couldn't come up. How you broke and you had slaves?
Yeah, that was bad. That was gold.
They fumbled, bro.
Yeah, how you broke and you had slaves? How you broke? Well, I think they broke because they didn't have slaves, Roy. I think that's how. They didn't actually have slaves. Those people never had slaves. Somebody 200 years ago had slaves, but they didn't. So if you pulled up on their crib, I'm not sure what you'd be looking for. I don't know if you're going to run in there trying to free the slaves, letting my people go. No more slavery. You can't have slaves. Free them. I don't know if you're going to try to, set up an underground railroad from their house to free all the slaves, but you're just going to be shouting at like a nice white family while they're eating dinner, and they're going to be totally confused staring at you because they don't have slaves, and their parents didn't, and their grandparents didn't, and their great-grandparents didn't, and their great-great-great-grandparents didn't. Actually, it's funny because this raises a point that I don't think Roy wanted to raise. It's true that having slaves did not translate into generational wealth for a lot of these families. At least not like 15 generations of wealth or whatever. That's because, for one thing, it's been a really long time. Also, there was a civil war that was fought. But and the South was decimated and bankrupted. But also, slavery was not was a counterproductive system economically. If anything, slavery held the South back. And that's interesting to note because it totally cuts against the claim that America was built on slavery. It was not. America was held back by slavery, if anything. And the other point, which a lot of people have made, not that this creepy outburst really calls for us to make points, doesn't really call for a rebuttal, but whatever. So the other point people have made is the obvious one, which is, like, why don't you go back to Africa and find the family that captured your ancestors and sold them into slavery to begin with? Why aren't you mad at them? Have you looked them up? You could probably find them. Find the family that kept your ancestors were captured in Africa. And not by any European, but by an African and sold into slavery. Have you tried to track them down? Have you looked them up on Zillow? I mean, that probably won't work. They probably don't live in the kind of home you can find on Zillow, but why don't you focus your attention on them? Go hold them to account for something that their distant relatives did 200 years ago. And it's also funny because, I've gotten in trouble for saying this, but when you think about a guy like Roy Wood, well, you've never thought about Roy Wood, but now that you are for this brief moment in time, and you think about him feeling angry at the family that bought his ancestors or brought them here as slaves. It's like feeling angry at them. Well, it doesn't really make sense. And this is one point about reparations that is rarely brought up. And sometimes it is, but it's rarely brought up. And it's a point that can be easy to misconstrue and take out of context. So whatever, that's fine. But the point is this, that reparations assumes that there is something to be repaired, that your life is worse now than it would have been had this thing not happened. Now, again, even if that's true, reparations would still be retarded, but it's not true. Like, it's definitely not true in this case. Roy Wood, if his ancestors weren't brought here, I mean, he's still mad. He almost gets emotional when he's talking about it, or at least is pretending to. A little bit of acting there. But as he's talking about it, you can see it's like seething anger he has. He's so angry about it that his ancestors were enslaved 200 years ago. 2 centuries later, he's still so angry about it that he's obsessing over it. But then you have to ask, well, what are you angry about now? Do you wish that if your ancestors were not brought here, you would be living in Africa right now. So you are in a better place now, much better than you would have been had the bad thing not happened. Actually, you probably wouldn't exist at all. If your bloodline had stayed in Africa for these past 200 years, it's a very high chance that it would have been wiped out by tribal warfare, disease. If that hadn't happened, this thing that you're still mad about somehow that didn't happen to you, but if it hadn't happened, then either you'd be living in Africa now or you would not exist. So there's something just incoherent about being angry at something that happened centuries ago and something that without it happening, you would not exist. Or if you did exist, you would exist in a much worse condition than you currently do. Now, does that make slavery good? Is that a justification? Obviously not. And if you take what I'm saying that way, then you're just a stupid or dishonest person, and that's your problem. All I'm saying is the fact that it's just a fact. I mean, you can't dispute it. Roy Wood is almost certainly in a better position today now than he would have been had his ancestors not been brought here by slaves. That's the kind of thing that people could get mad at you saying, but they can't dispute it. They can, well, how dare you say that? Yeah, but am I wrong? Well, no, but still, how dare you say it? There's a lot of that. And so but this is a freeing thing, right? Roy, I mean, free yourself. You are free. Your parents were free, your grandparents, your great-grandparents. So, you've been free your whole life. Your family's been free for a very long time. Legally free, physically free, you can go do what you want. But your mind is still trapped, right? Your mind is enslaved. You've enslaved your own mind through resentment, misplaced rage, anger, blame. Whatever it is you're upset about in your own life, you're blaming this random family in the suburbs. Right? You even admit they don't have any money, like they've got problems of their own. You're living better than they are. And you're you're enslaved by it. So free yourself. And this is one of the ways, is to realize that, yeah, well, this thing was bad, but A, it didn't happen to me, and B, I'm in a better spot today because of it. So, well, like, what is there to be angry about at this point? What is there for me to be angry about? There's a lot for my ancestors who died a long time ago to be angry about, but they're not here anymore. They're dead. What is there for me personally to be angry about? Well, not much. Yeah, we talked yesterday about the incident at Gold's Gym, the trans-identified male who went into the women's locker room, and a woman, Tish, confronted him and for standing up for herself and the other woman there. She was banned from the premises. Well, now the trans dude is speaking out. He talked to TMZ yesterday for some reason. Watch.
I told the people that raised me that this is the way that I was when I was 8 years old, and really I stuffed it down pretty deep, and I began using hormones this year in February, and I actually relinquished that information to her about name change, and it says female on my ID and hormones, and I mean I'm registered as a female with the gym. So.
And were you at that moment, because she told us about a couple of different encounters, were you fully clothed at that moment?
Well, she has become aggressive with me on 4 different occasions, actually at different locations in Los Angeles at Gold's Gym. But fully clothed. I believe I was enrobed in a towel on one occasion, and this last time I was clothed the entire time. Yeah.
Okay.
Again, I apologize if this is too graphic, but I just think it's important.
Let's speak truth, baby.
Okay. Have you fully transitioned?
Be clearer when you say that.
Your genitalia.
That is a process that requires a quite lengthy work.
From her perspective, I'm just wondering if you see her perspective. She's saying that she's looking at you, say, in a towel, and you still have male genitalia, and, you may be transitioning, but could you understand her being uncomfortable?
Well, I certainly do not understand it, but I do get the notion of the fear-mongering that she's perpetuating.
So the answer is no, he has not, quote unquote, transitioned, and even though it's impossible anyway. But so he's a dude with male genitals swinging all around the women's locker room. Not that it matters anyway. I mean, if he had mutilated himself, that would not make the whole thing any less disturbing. Right. I mean, this line of questioning seems to imply that if he had mutilated his genitalia and was flashing that all around the locker room, that it would be better. Like, if anything, that would make it considerably more disturbing. I mean, imagine being a woman and having to see that. So, it doesn't matter. What matters is that this is a dude, and yet you see, even as TMZ's interviewing, it's big shock that not a lot of moral courage from TMZ. I would have expected more. I would have expected more out of TMZ, but they're still being very cautious and gentle with him, and they shouldn't be. Right? I mean, nobody buys this act. He doesn't even buy it. And if there's one thing that I can emphasize about this issue that maybe I haven't emphasized enough, I mean, I think I've emphasized everything, every angle on this issue that you could possibly emphasize. But here's an important one that isn't raised often enough, which is that this guy doesn't believe that he's a woman. Obviously, you don't believe he's a woman. I don't believe it. None of us do, because we have basic common sense. But leftists pretend to believe it. They really don't believe it. Right? No one on the outside looks at that video and thinks that that's a woman. No, nobody does. But what I'm saying is that he doesn't even believe it. He's not confused. He's not deluded, despite appearances to the contrary. For him, this is a fantasy that he's playing out. And the callous indifference is part of it. People say, well, how could you, well, you don't care that, and as the interview went on, they started asking about it. Well, why don't you care how the women there feel? Well, it's not that he doesn't care. No, in fact, the fact that it makes women uncomfortable and scared, that is part of the fantasy. That is part of the fetish for him. It's not that he doesn't care that women feel uncomfortable. It's that he wants them to be uncomfortable. That's why he's in there. Like, he gets off on it. So this is a man who knows he's a man, and everyone else does, and he's in the locker room because this is his fantasy. This is his fetish that he's playing out. He says at another point, I don't know if it was in that clip because I was only vaguely paying attention, but it's at some point in this interview, he says that it's actually interesting. He says he's had run-ins with this woman at 4 different locations around town. And that's something that maybe if the cops were interested in doing their jobs in that town, maybe they would look into it. Sounds to me like a stalker situation. Sounds to me like he really enjoys the reaction he gets from this woman. He enjoys the humiliation, hers and his own. And he's following her around to get his fix. That's what it sounds like. I don't know if that's true. I'm not saying that as a fact, but it sounds like that to me. And what certainly is true is that this is all about him playing out his fantasy. So it's not even an issue of confusion at all. We have less than 2,000 Daily Wire lifetime memberships remaining. Turns out having all access benefits for life with no renewals is something everybody wants. So here are your options. You could buy one while they're still available, or you could win mine. That's right. I have my very own lifetime membership to give away. Made it ridiculously easy to enter. Download the free Daily Wire Plus app in the App Store. Open it, tap follow under my picture, and that's it. You're entered. And who knows, I could be calling you to give you my personal lifetime membership. But before any of that happens, you need to download the Daily Wire Plus app and follow me now to enter it to win. Finally, as I said yesterday, wokeness is not really dead. The label is dead, the term, but not the thing itself. And yet there are particular kinds of wokeness that feel kind of passé, feel like they've gone out of style. And that's why this clip, which was actually from a few days ago from some YouTube channel, and it went viral on X, but it feels like a time capsule from like the year 2020. Watch.
I have a question. Can you tell me what category of fat I fit in?
So it's based on your shirt size. So if you are a 1 or 2X, you are small fat. 3 to 4X, you are mid fat. 5 to 6X, you are super fat, is based on what level of privilege you have in the world. So someone in a small fat category may not struggle getting on an airplane, but someone in a mid fat or super fat may not be able to use even the airplane extender. So that's where that comes in, and like the privilege levels of like what fat means to different people.
Small fat, mid fat, super fat, mega fat, cosmic fat, galactic fat. I kind of like all the different sizes that they come up with. I think if I opened a fast food restaurant, I would make those the sizes. They sound like value meal sizes. I gotta get a small fat burger and fries, please. Can I get the chicken tenders and fries? Yeah, make it a super fat. No, let's do mid fat. No, let's go. Yeah, let's stick with the super fat. And I appreciate the strategy. It's like a good coping mechanism. And this is a way to rationalize. Because you know what it means? It means that even once you become fat, there are still 3 or 4 levels before you're the fattest kind of fat. So you could become full-on fat. You could be a full-on 300-pound, greasy, sweaty lard ass, and you could still feel pretty good because you could say, hey, man, I'm only mid-fat. Right? I'm only, I wear a size 52 jeans, but I'm only mid-fat. Then you can look at all the people fatter than you and say, my God, look at those super fats. Disgusting. Talk about letting yourself go. The super fats. Now, I know it works the opposite way in the oppression Olympics. I understand that in the world of fat acceptance, you want to achieve the higher levels of fat. So it's the opposite way, where if you're super fat, you can look down on the small fats and the mid fats. Right? They haven't been in this game as long as you have. You're a veteran of this being fat game. You're a veteran of the fat ass game. These rookies over here. Oh, you're only 97 pounds overweight. Pfft, you're a small fat. You got nothing on me. You don't know my struggle. So I get that that's what they're doing, but if I was a fat person, I would flip it. So as someone who doesn't fetishize the idea of being oppressed, I would. But as someone who does look for excuses to be lazy and rationalize it, and I can be pretty good at that, I'd flip it the other way. And it is funny that, fat acceptance, body positivity has receded. And we that's another thing that we look at as a sign of the decline of wokeness. But that really has nothing to do with it at all. It really doesn't. And I mean, this is kind of the most obvious analysis that you could ever offer, but it's true that the thing that killed the fat acceptance movement, you really don't hear about it much anymore. The body positivity movement, you don't hear about it as much anymore. And some of the biggest, in more ways than one, some of the biggest advocates of the body positivity movement have turned their back on it, have betrayed it by losing weight. Lizzo, Lizzo now she's a small fat now. She's not eating. She's downgraded. So what killed the fat acceptance movement? Well, it was Ozempic. I mean, that was it. All of these people came up with these elaborate ideas, these personal philosophies, this whole complicated thing, this whole worldview about body positivity and fat acceptance, and they started their own cult of fat acceptance and all of this stuff. And all of that was just to justify being fat and convince themselves that it's good to be fat. That's all that any of it ever was. Obviously. And the very second that an easy shortcut to being skinny went on the market, they all just jumped on that. Maybe they didn't jump on it. Maybe they couldn't jump, but they all rolled onto that option as soon as they possibly could. So the point is, it was all just cope the whole time. Big shocker. People get fat because they're lazy. That's it. This has been treated as a controversial view for a long time. I've had people, I've gotten into trouble for saying that in the past. I've had nutrition experts yelling at me because I said that, if you eat too much and you're lazy, you'll gain weight. And you get all these people that say, well, there's so much more nuance to it than that. Think about the nuances. It's not that simple. No, well, actually it is. Actually, it is really that simple. If you're fat, it's because you're not moving enough and you're eating too much. That's it. And if you were to eat less and move more, you would lose weight. 100%, that's how it always works. 100% of the time for every single, that's physics. That is physics. It cannot go any other way. So anyone who says, well, it doesn't, it's not that simple for me. Oh, really? You defy the laws of physics? Really? What are you? What are you? What It's like a superpower. What is this? It's like an inverse superpower. No, it doesn't work that way for me. Really? What else doesn't work for you? Gravity? So if I were to say, if you jump off a building, you'll fall. Well, it doesn't work. It's real easy to say that, but it doesn't work that way for everybody. No, it does. It works that way for literally everybody because that is just a law of nature. And this is one of them. So, but all that stuff, most of that stuff has fallen away because now people got fat because they're lazy, and now there is a lazy way to become unfat. And suddenly nobody wants to be fat positive anymore. It's pretty amazing. Well, I guess not amazing at all, but it is funny. Okay, speaking of being lazy, that's going to do it for the show today, actually. No, it's not laziness, but I wanted to do an extra long monologue to open the show today, where we really get into the multiculturalism issue. So that's where I wanted to focus the show to be. So in any case, we will wrap it there, and that'll do it for the show today and this week. Have a great weekend. Talk to you on Monday. Godspeed.
Hey there, I'm Daily Wire Executive Editor John Bickley.
And I'm Georgia Howe, and we're the hosts of Morning Wire.
We bring you all the news you need to know in 15 minutes or less.
Watch and listen to Morning Wire 7 days a week, everywhere you get your podcasts.
The Matt Walsh Show is a Daily Wire production. Copyright Daily Wire 2025.